There is a phenomenon happening to millions of people right now that nobody is talking about honestly. They are earning more than their parents did. They are working at better jobs with better benefits, in a better economy by almost every measurable standard. And yet, every month there is less left over. Every year the feeling of financial pressure is stronger rather than weaker. They cannot point to a single catastrophic decision. They have not made reckless choices. They are doing the things they were told to do, and it is still not working. If this is your experience, something important must be said clearly before we go any further. You are not doing it wrong. You are experiencing the entirely predictable output of a system that was never designed to make you feel wealthy, no matter how much you earn. And the sooner you understand that system, the sooner you can stop fighting it and start working around it. Most financial education operates inside a very specific and very limited framework. It treats money as a math problem with a straightforward solution. Increase income, reduce expenses, and invest the remainder consistently over time. This framework is not wrong in principle. It contains genuinely sound advice, but it operates as though human beings are rational economic agents who respond to information with consistent, logical behavior. The entire field of behavioral economics, built over the last 50 years by researchers who actually studied how people make financial decisions rather than how they theoretically should, tells a completely different story. People do not behave rationally with money. They behave psychologically. And until you understand the specific psychological forces operating on your financial decisions, the math-based advice will keep failing you, no matter how many times you attempt to apply it in your own life. Feeling poorer as you earn more is not a personal failure. It is the predictable result of 7 specific psychological mechanisms that most people have never been told about. Understanding each one does not merely explain why you feel stuck. It creates the awareness that makes escape possible, because you cannot change a system you cannot see, and you cannot see a system that has never been named for you. The first mechanism operates so smoothly and automatically that most people never notice it happening at all. Economists call it lifestyle inflation, and it functions like water filling a container. The moment your income rises, your spending rises to match it, not through reckless decisions or obvious indulgence, but through dozens of small, individually reasonable upgrades that compound into a significant shift. The apartment you move into when your salary increases is slightly nicer than the one you had before because you can now afford it, and the improvement feels genuinely earned. The car becomes slightly better. The grocery choices shift upward. The restaurants cost a little more. The vacations extend a little further. Each individual upgrade is justifiable in isolation, but the cumulative effect is that within 12 to 18 months of a significant income increase, most people find themselves spending almost exactly the additional amount they are earning, leaving their actual financial margin essentially unchanged. The second mechanism operates even more invisibly because it takes place entirely beneath conscious awareness and works in direct opposition to the excitement that accompanies every income increase. Psychologists have identified a phenomenon called hedonic adaptation, which refers to the brain's extraordinary capacity to normalize new circumstances and return to a baseline emotional state, regardless of what has changed externally. The research is remarkably consistent across cultures and income levels. Within a few months of almost any positive change, including income increases, material improvements, and major life upgrades, people report emotional states that are indistinguishable from where they were before the change. The new salary becomes just your salary. The upgraded apartment becomes just where you live. Each of these things continues to cost money at the new higher level, but the psychological return on that investment has completely evaporated. You are paying premium prices for experiences that feel entirely ordinary because to your adapted brain, they genuinely are. The third mechanism is ancient in its origin, but has been dramatically amplified by the technology most people carry in their pocket all day. Human beings evolved in small social groups where the relevant comparison was with the people immediately around them. For most of human history, your reference point for measuring your own prosperity was the community you could actually observe, the person in the next house, the family at the same gathering, people living in genuinely similar circumstances to your own. Modern social media has completely dismantled this arrangement. Your reference group is now the entire digitally connected world, curated specifically to surface the most aspirational content available. The vacation that was staged over 3 days to produce a single perfect photograph. The home decorated specifically for that one moment. Your brain registers all of this not as a highlight reel, but as evidence of how ordinary life looks for other people, and quietly recalibrates your own sense of adequacy downward in response. The fourth mechanism is less psychologically dramatic, but financially significant in ways that accumulate silently over time. The modern consumer economy has been fundamentally restructured around the subscription model, which transforms what were once active purchasing decisions into an endless stream of automatic, invisible charges. Streaming services, cloud storage, software subscriptions, news memberships, gym fees, food delivery services, insurance add-ons, premium app tiers, and dozens of other monthly costs renew automatically without requiring any conscious decision from the subscriber. Because each individual charge feels small, and each individual service provides at least some value at least occasionally, none of them triggers the psychological evaluation that a single larger purchase would provoke. But added together, the monthly total for most people with a modern digital lifestyle easily exceeds several $100s. What makes this particularly significant is that these costs rise automatically over time through price increases that subscribers never consciously notice or actively choose to accept. The fifth mechanism is the most psychologically complex, and it is the one that most financial advisors, regardless of their technical expertise, almost entirely fail to address. When income rises significantly, it does not merely change the numbers on a balance sheet. It changes the story a person tells themselves about who they are. The new income level comes attached to a new identity, and that identity carries with it an entirely non-negotiable set of expenses. A person who has entered a new professional tier discovers that maintaining their position in that tier, in both their own perception and in the perception of the people around them, requires spending money to support the lifestyle that the tier implies. The apartment, the clothing, the transportation, the restaurants, the experiences that mark someone as belonging to the new level. This spending is not experienced as optional. It is experienced as necessary for maintaining coherence between the internal self-image and the external presentation, and every income increase triggers a new version of this process. The sixth mechanism is the one that most directly contradicts the promise that motivated the income increase in the first place. Most people pursue higher incomes in part because they believe that more money will produce more freedom, more time, and more ability to live on their own terms. What actually happens in most career trajectories is the opposite. Higher income arrives attached to higher responsibility, higher availability requirements, higher performance expectations, and higher overall demand on time and cognitive resources. The hours available for genuine rest, for activities that produce well-being rather than productivity, for the relationships that give life its meaning, shrink in proportion to how aggressively income increases. And when time becomes scarce, spending on convenience predictably expands. The takeaway food instead of the home-prepared meal, the paid service instead of the personally handled task, the experience purchased rather than created. The very person who was supposed to be freed by higher income ends up spending more specifically because the income has claimed the time and energy that thoughtful spending would otherwise have required. The seventh mechanism is the most deliberately constructed, and it is the only one in this list that was specifically engineered by other people for reasons that have nothing to do with your financial well-being. The platforms that deliver your social media experience were designed by sophisticated teams of behavioral scientists and software engineers with a singular commercial objective: maximize the time you spend inside the platform. What the research found, and what these teams have repeatedly built into their products, is that negative emotional states, specifically envy, inadequacy, and the specific discomfort of feeling behind, drive dramatically higher engagement than positive emotional states. A person who feels content does not keep scrolling. A person who feels inadequate does. Your daily exposure to aspirational content, luxury lifestyles, apparent success, and carefully curated displays of abundance is not a side effect of using these platforms. It is the mechanism through which the platform creates the emotional state that keeps you engaged and generates the advertising revenue the business depends on. These 7 mechanisms do not operate independently. They form a self-reinforcing system in which each one amplifies the effects of the others. Lifestyle inflation establishes a new spending baseline, which means relative deprivation now operates at a higher threshold, which makes the identity upgrade trap more expensive to maintain, which increases subscription accumulation, which compounds the time scarcity that drives convenience spending, which increases the vulnerability to comparison-based purchasing triggered by the social media algorithm. Each mechanism creates the conditions that make the others more effective. This is why income increases so reliably fail to produce the sense of financial progress that motivated them in the first place. The system was not designed to allow you to pull ahead. It was designed to ensure that whatever you earn is efficiently redirected back into consumption before it can compound into actual wealth. The measurement that actually captures financial progress is not income. It is the gap between income and total outflow, the amount that remains after every mechanism has taken its share. That gap, consistently maintained and deliberately directed toward assets rather than consumption, is the only path to genuine financial security. And it is a gap that can be maintained at almost any income level, which is why research on wealth consistently finds people with modest incomes who have built genuine security alongside people with substantial incomes who remain financially precarious decade after decade. The income number is largely irrelevant to the long-term outcome. The margin is everything, and the margin is determined almost entirely by how clearly and consistently you can see and manage the 7 mechanisms that are working continuously to eliminate it. Awareness is not a complete solution on its own, but it is the only starting point that actually works. The moment you can recognize lifestyle inflation as it is occurring, the moment you can catch yourself comparing your internal experience to someone else's external presentation, the moment you notice a subscription renewing for a service you have not used in 3 months, the moment you see the identity-driven spending impulse before you act on it, something genuinely changes. You have a choice that was not available to you before. Not a comfortable choice, and not always an easy one, but an actual choice. The system can only capture your income automatically as long as it remains invisible to you. Conversion exposes it from an automatic process into a decision, and decisions, unlike automatic processes, can be made differently. Take one of these 7 mechanisms and address it directly this week. Not all 7 simultaneously, and not in general terms. One specific mechanism, one specific and observable action. That is where meaningful behavioral change actually begins to compound over time. Subscribe to Awake Within for more psychology-first analysis of the forces that shape financial outcomes, and leave a comment below telling me which of the 7 mechanisms you recognized most clearly in your own life. The patterns in what people share consistently shape what comes next on this channel. A note before you close this video. This video was produced using artificial intelligence for both the voice narration and the visual content.